Welcome everybody to Bobby Talks, ... Those dots are there to tell you that there's always more to the story. Ladies and gentlemen, a little bit different format for you today as I feel the need to have Bobby talk to you. There's a lot of things that I've been wanting to share as of late, and I feel the necessity to sit down and instead of sitting here like we normally would across from somebody, sharing stories, sharing thoughts, experiences, and having a few laughs here and there, I thought it was imperative that we sit down and kind of talk about the social structure of where we're at in society and the idea of human downgrading and the part that we play and the part that the social media conglomerates, these big market new technology companies play, and just exactly what's happening inside of our minds and our bodies. I got to tell you, though, I want to start off with this, and the reason that I felt so compelled to do this show today. Something tragic happened to a friend of mine about a week ago, to him and his family. And it's one of those things that when this tragedy takes place, just unforeseen, uncalled for, just straight up bullshit that took place, this lack of humanity. And it's just one of those things that instead of dwelling on that part of it, I want to tell you what's led me to do this show today the way that I currently am. I felt that because of the tragedy that took place, it gave me time to self-reflect. Sitting at the funeral yesterday and thinking about my own life, thinking about life as a greater picture, and then the totality, the whole of 7 billion people in the world. I felt that it was best for me to sit down with you, share these thoughts. But what I came upon was a couple things. Number one, there are more people in this world than ever before. 7 billion people, and yet we are more disconnected now than we've ever been. Now, I know what I just said there isn't anything new to probably anybody, because most of the time the conversations that you have with people is how there's a lack of empathy today for one another. There's a lack of connection for one another. And yet when you sit down and you have conversations with people, real conversations on both sides of the fences, even in the middle, you realize that you're actually a lot more alike than we are different. But yet we still focus on these 1% of us that don't make up our daily lives to somehow make up our daily or make up our bigger perspective. And I'm telling you that it's something that's been at play for quite some time now. And maybe it's just the older I get, maybe I'm trying not to be a victim of my time and just being older and saying that, you know, I don't want to be the old man or the old man saying get off of his lawn because his times and the world is changing around him. I'm telling you sitting here right now that there is a gigantic disconnect amongst one of us or each of us. And I think it's a real huge social problem that is crumbling the foundation of the social experience amongst one another. It's the thing that is crumbling the civility amongst each other. I'm not saying it's a doomsday model, but I'm saying that it's leading to this very, very unforeseen, maybe 10 years ago, but now that we're in it, it's leading to something that I believe to be the absolute destruction of humanity when it comes to ever feeling real connection towards one another. And why do I go there? How does my brain rabbit trail down to that part of from the tragedy that took place to where we are now? Well, I got to tell you, I watched a documentary over the weekend called The Social Dilemma. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about today comes and stems from that documentary. If you guys haven't seen it, I think it's a compelling look at what's taking place to us as human beings in the social structure that exists between one and us. And this idea of human downgrading. And I specifically want to look at human downgrading through the eyes of what the smartphone and social media has presented to us and how we continue to actively engage ourselves in that and ultimately should be held responsible for exactly what's taken place today. This documentary really touched me in ways that I didn't think that it would. Tristan Harris is the guy that you're going to take away from this the most. See, what this documentary is in a nutshell is this idea that all of these former employees of these big tech conglomerates, these big tech companies, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Google, you name it, they've all worked for them. And these aren't like bitter former employees. They're not on here saying anything bad about any of the companies. They're just talking about the actual, the way that these companies are built and what they do to human beings. They say there's a lack of an ethical and moral compass that's taking place. And it's not one person's fault. It's just the way it is designed. It's the way the artificial intelligence is designed to deteriorate piece by piece, slowly, who we are in our minds. And it's led to a lot of real life trauma amongst families. And maybe I was reaching earlier, but maybe I wasn't. It's led to human disconnect amongst one another in a time where we should be closer than we've ever been, because we've been given such an opportunity with this technology to use it for the way that we want it to. Let me break down some of the things that might be interesting to you if you have not seen this documentary. Okay, before we do, though, I want to kind of go into the origin story about 13, 14 years ago, about where we were in society and what was starting to take place. If I look back to about 2000, let's say 4, I was a senior going into my final year of high school. Facebook did not exist at the high school element. 2004, Mark Zuckerberg created Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg is said to create Facebook because he wanted to impress a girl. That is on record. That is, whether it can be debated or not, that is on record of why he created it. No harm there. Now, maybe in his head there was harm and why his reasons for wanting to do it, but nothing on the top surface. 2004, I'm a senior, and I'm telling you, the only thing on the internet that has really existed was of social media was MySpace, which people barely used. It was more of you shared off your interest in your musical taste. But for the most part, the biggest thing would be probably Instant Messenger, ICQ, AIM. AT&T had an AIM, I believe. Just the ways to talk to each other that way. That was kind of the text messaging of its time, but you still had to sit in front of a computer to do it. You still had to be, dialed into the internet or whatever you had if you had, fast speed internet. That was a game changer for communication. And I'm absolutely sure that there is some people that was talking about how that could have led to the downfall of society and so on and so on. But it was still something that you could leave and walk away from. It wasn't attached to your body. It was an extension of who you were. So you still had to leave the bedroom or the office, wherever your computer was, and still go out and live life. Now, we all had cell phones, but I can tell you as a senior in high school, we didn't text. And this is 14 years ago. Okay, did not text. We were, the internet didn't exist on your phone, and if it did, you had to pay a high rate to it. There was no such thing as a smartphone. It was flip phones only. You might have had a slider. Absolutely obnoxious two ways that even then I remember being like, this is a little obnoxious. This is a little invasive, I think, of other people. I shouldn't have to hear your conversation. But we used it, and we thought it was a problem then. And there's probably a reason that it doesn't really exist today, and that's because most of us want to keep our stuff private. So yeah, that was about 2004, Facebook exists. Somewhere around that time, 2005, 2006, Steve Jobs works for Apple. He's the founder of Apple, and he's working on something revolutionary, and that is the iPhone. And I can remember exactly where I was the moment I saw the very first iPhone commercial. And that is, I think, memorable for a reason, because it's something that you've never seen before. You thought you were like, oh boy, this is a game changer. You could feel it. I remember when it was just a 30-second ad, and I watched it, and I encourage you to go and see it, because it's, it just seems so silly now, but it was just 30 seconds of as many clips as you could find of people saying, hello, 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 hello. And finally, at the end, it showed and revealed what the iPhone looked like. It was this, as you know, the smartphone as we know it now, with this sleek screen and a touch screen capability. It was a phone call from Johnny Appleseed, and commercial went black. There it was. That was it. That was enough right there to put the world in a craze. And I can remember saying, looking to my brother, my older brother at the time, and being like, whoa, what was that? I remember thinking I had to have that. Now, it's interesting in that, being that I'm 33 and that was 13 years ago, that I still to this day have never owned an iPhone, but I've had plenty of smartphones. So I'm not by any means, ridding myself of any responsibility here. But I'm just letting you know that that was a game changer. And again, Steve Jobs was said to want to create a phone that would increase and enhance the human experience. Well, it's fascinating because it did just that. But I don't think anybody could have foreseen some of the byproducts of what this phone has done to us, and the perfect marriage of that cell phone kind of taking place with the idea of social media coming to fruition, where Facebook is going to launch to more than just an exclusive collegiate website. It's going to go to a point where now you can be 18 and older, you can be in high school, and then it finally gets to a point where it's anybody and everybody, whenever, wherever, as long as you have access to the internet. And really, the doc is about 2009. So the last 11 years, you've seen kind of this perfect marriage of social media and smartphones and how they go together. So that's the show topic today. That's kind of where I want to start. This idea of human downgrading through the eyes and lens of smartphones and social media. Before we can absolutely jump into that, I just want to say next week we will be at our normal capacity. We'll have Nicholas Horton. He's an MMA fighter. He's going to be joining us next week. And I also would like for you guys to subscribe. So if you haven't already, please take the time, pause this video, hit that like button and subscribe. Jumping back into it. Social Dilemma. They talk about the constructs of what is the business model for social media platforms. So Tristan Harris, he used to be the designer at Google. And he and some of the other participants in this documentary, they talk about just exactly what is the business model to social media. And it simply comes down to this. All social media platforms are all competing for your attention. How much time can they get you and get me to stay on their particular site? I'm going to read that one more time. All social media platforms are all competing for your attention. How much time can they get you and I to spend on their site? It's a war of human attention, and we are willingly giving it to anybody other than another real human being. We're giving it to these avatar aspects of us, these avatar personalities of us that live inside of our phone, this fake reality. We're giving our attention to the artificial intelligence, to these new age tools that are being used. So that's the business model, competing for our attention, and we're willingly giving it to them. Now, don't get me wrong. On the top surface, there's nothing wrong with that. On the backside, what's taking place, and this is where the Social Dilemma, this documentary, does a fantastic job, is what's taking place is on the backside of this, one of the byproducts is, not even a byproduct, what's actually taking place inside the business model of these social media platforms is these algorithms that have been created so that they can track exactly how much time you've spent on each video. They will determine, just based off of you and your scrolling habits, exactly what it is you like, exactly what it is you don't like based on percentages. And they will continue to filter up those videos, those types of pictures, those types of memes, whatever you have it, they'll show you more of that so that you continue down the rabbit trail and you spend more time, more attention on these sites. Some of us, again, that might not be shocking to anybody. It might not be anything news breaking to you, but that's what's taking place. And we might even know it's taking place, and yet we continue to go along. Is that the problem? The problem isn't that. And I want to get you a couple quotes. If you're not paying for the product, then you are the product. That's one of the quotes in the Social Dilemma. Another quote that comes from this is Edward Tufte says that there's only two industries in the world that call their customers users. Illegal drugs and software. Those two quotes to me stand out for a reason, because if we're not paying for something, we think the cost of it is free. But as we sit here 11 years later, we know that the cost of this free service is absolutely astronomically high, to a point that we don't even understand. And I'll lay out more of how it is astronomically high as we get going down in this podcast. But if you're not paying for it, the product, then you have to be the product. So the question is, how does these social media platforms, how do they make their money? Well, by now you guys know that when you get on your phone and you sign up for any of these social media websites or the applications, you know that you have to say yes to every single one of these questions. Are you going to give them permission to listen to your audio? Are you going to give them permission to look into your photos? Are you going to give them permission to get your contacts? Why do these companies need these things? Well, that's because they're gathering data on you, and then they're going to take that data and they're going to turn around and sell that data to advertisers, so that advertisers can give these social media platforms millions and millions and billions of dollars, so that they can help influence you to buy their product. Well, that's just like anything, right? You're watching TV, you're going to have commercials, therefore you can not have to pay for subscriptions. You pay for a subscription, you shouldn't have to watch a commercial. That's the difference in the two models. The issue is that because we want these types of luxuries, these types of escapes from our lives, we have to sell our privacy rights to these companies. Edward Snowden was just on Joe Rogan, and he talks about how Facebook, Google, all of these companies do a really good job of policing and protecting their users from other third-party websites. But Facebook is still watching and monitoring every single thing you do. Google is still watching and monitoring every single thing you do through Google. So even then, even though they're protecting you from third-party sites, they themselves are breaking these privacy rights because you've given them to them. They're not breaking the law by any means, but we have sold ourselves, quote unquote, to the devil so that we can have these escapes from our lives. Well, the issue with that is a bunch. It's absolutely a bunch. Let me read you another line here. Companies want to sell you certainty. How do they do this? Well, they need to be able to project very, very well. Best way to project is to get their hands on a lot of data. You see, it's not just anymore that they have our information and now they sold it. They don't even need us anymore to give them. Like, there's this old conspiracy theory. They talk about this on the documentary. This old conspiracy theory about we don't even have to type anything into our phone anymore. We can just say it out loud, and our phones will pick it up. And next thing you know, you say McDonald's out loud. Next thing you know, McDonald's is going to show up into your phone. Well, they have debunked that theory, and they said that absolutely isn't one of the algorithms, and that doesn't take place. But what's happened is that they are able to predict your patterns so much based on what time you get up every day, how much you check into something, how much time you spend on your phone, how much time you spend on this particular video, how much time you spent listening to that advertisement versus that other advertisement. They ultimately know you better than you know yourself, and therefore, just because you brought up the idea out loud about McDonald's, whether or not it came up right away or was going to come up tomorrow, that ad was going to pop up on your phone because they know that more times than not, that is the place you go. That means there's more at work here happening on our phones than we ever imagined. They don't need us to do anything anymore. We have done enough already that they have enough data on us that they can sell our projected data. Social media platforms run on 3 different goals to be successful: engagement, growth, and advertisement. Sneakiness and deceit is at the center of what we do. That was one of the quotes from the movie. Physical and active engagement. The longer you're on their product, the more growth they can get, because the more you're going to share with people and show people around you and then get them influenced to want to get on and share and show their product and their influences. And then obviously advertising goes into that, and that's how they make their money. That's the business model, folks. And it's scary because it's no longer just a tools-based technology environment. It's now an addiction, manipulative-based technology environment. The differences between the two is that they talk about tools-based technology environment, talks about how back in the day, it used to be a tool, it used to be a shovel, it used to be a bicycle, it used to be anything that worked for you. A shovel is a shovel until you need it to be. It sits in the shed. You need a shovel. You go get the shovel. It does shovel-like things. When you're done with it, the shovel goes back into the shed, and therefore it's done. It doesn't call to you in the middle of the night and say, "Come use me. Come use me." It sits there. There is no awareness. An addiction, manipulative-based technology environment is different because your cell phone is doing something different now. Your cell phone is probing you. It is actively waking you up. It is actively getting your attention. It is probing you so that you use it. It's insecure. It needs your attention at all times. You're sitting there. What does this look like in common practice? Especially today. It used to be if you had someone notify you specifically, your phone would go bing or whatever ringtone you had attached to it, and you would check your phone because it was something specifically to you. Now it's probing you to use their phone. You're not using it. You decided you're going to put it down. You've moved on with your day. You're doing something different, and then you hear the bing. You look down. Oh, it's so-and-so's birthday. Okay, well, I could have got on Facebook and found birthday lists, and I could have went through that if I chose to do that. But now the phone has decided that I need to know that it's so-and-so's birthday. They're hoping that I jump on immediately, send that person a happy birthday, and yet now I'm on there, so now I go back down the rabbit trail of video watching, posting, and, you know, it's a political environment out there. So if you see one of those things, you got to read all the comments that go with it. That is something that is absolutely different than what it used to be. So when people say, oh yeah, this is just another tool, it's not just another tool. It's the most sophisticated version of this tool that you've ever seen. Ever seen. It is actively probing you. So the question is, now that you know the business model, what's happening on the mind? What are the actual effects? And this is the part that I want to get to. You see, what they found out is this. Magicians work because they know more about the vulnerabilities of the mind than even the smartest people do. Something called persuasive technology. Something called the positive intermittent reinforcement. You know that idea of when you refresh your screen, you're going to get something new every single time. And that's because what they figured out with these algorithms is that you want positive intermittent reinforcement. It is the act of not knowing what you're going to get when you get it. Not the act of not knowing what you're going to get, when you're going to get it, or if you're going to get it, but they compare this to the exact same thing that's taking place inside of the brain when people go and play in the casinos, when they go to slot machines. You pull that lever down and bing, bing, bing. You're hoping that you're going to hit the jackpot one of these times, but you just have to know, what am I going to get? When am I going to get it? If I'm going to get it, but you got to play. You got to play. And that's what's happening on your phone. Every time you pick that phone up and you hit refresh or you go to another ad or app and you're looking, you're actively looking, you're actively engaged. You're sitting there trying to figure out when it's going to take place for me. It's almost Inception, folks. That movie with Christopher Nolan. They have planted a behavior inside of you that you didn't even know was taking place. You had no idea that it was taking place. It's a byproduct, and we'll talk about it in a second. But it's this idea of implanting behaviors of an unconscious habit that you are being programmed at a deeper level. You don't even know it. So that when you look at your cell phone just sitting there, you pick it up and you play the slot machine. Implanting behaviors at an unconscious habit and an unconscious habit that you are being programmed at a deeper level, you don't even know it. So that when you look at your cell phone, just sitting there, you pick it up and you play the slot machine. Fascinating. It's just fascinating because it's so spot on. It's absolutely what's taking place. It's this idea that, I hope somebody messages me. I do this show, right? I absolutely love doing this show. I've taken a chance doing this episode because I'm hoping that other people feel just like me and that maybe I'm saying some things that is being brought light to their day, or, some type of attention, bring your attention to the light of day. So I too enjoy, my favorite part is when I get feedback on the show, when I get comments. You don't have to like it. You don't have to heart it. But when I get that comment, somebody drops into the DMs and they say, Robert, really enjoy what you're doing. I feed off of that. It is critical. And I think it's healthy feedback. But again, I could just be trying to compartmentalize my life and justify why I think it's okay to use this. And ultimately, that's what you want. You want people to have healthy habits with these new age tools rather than unhealthy habits. The problem is it's what is doing to our society, because we give in to the unhealthy nature, the unhealthy habit, the psychology of the mind that's actually taking place. And it's not a good one. It's not a good place to be, ladies and gentlemen. It is where we spend our darkest moments in rooms alone, even in a room that's full with people. If you are somebody who has insecurities, this thing is only going to amplify those insecurities. Absolutely going to. On the other side of the break here, we're going to dive into the statistics and the evidence of why this is deteriorating our people, and actually jump into a lot of other things, but jump in how to fix it and get to our big hopeful finish. But that's on the other side of the break. Stay tuned. We'll talk to you in just a second. Thanks, guys. Hey, welcome everybody back to Bobby Talks, ... Those dots are there to tell you that there's always more to the story. Like we said, today's story is about human manipulation, about the fight for the war on your attention, my attention as well, and how we have long given it away to artificial intelligence and no longer to one another. It's the battle of how do we get back on track, because we are absolutely the most disconnected I think we've ever been in our society. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I wanted to kind of share this idea of these two visuals. Let me give you this visual. About 7 billion people in the world and nobody's talking to one another. If you go back 150, 200 years to the horse and buggy times, and you got these people that before roads and everything was just beaten down trails, and you got a person that's walking down the trail and they come upon somebody after days of walking, they come upon a horse and buggy, a family, or just another person. Those two are going to stop and talk to each other. It's going to take place. You haven't seen somebody in a while. You're going to have this communication. You're going to share stories, share bread, experiences, whatnot. And then you'll go on your way. And you'll take that into the next town. You'll take that into your next relationship, and so on and so on and so on. That's human connection. Today, and I see it daily in my schools, see it daily in New York. I'm sure maybe you've done it. And there's no ill intention meant, but you'll have a crowded hallway, two people walking in opposite directions or two people walking towards each other from opposite directions. They bump into each other. Nobody even acknowledges it. No stories shared. If anything, there's going to be a negative outcome more than there's going to be a positive outcome. The connection is gone. Now, maybe that's just the most extreme example I can find. And in my simple mind, that's all I can get to. But I'm just letting you know that there's no connection anymore. And that's why today's show has been on the human downgrading through the specs of smartphones and cell phones. So if you're just joining us, stay tuned. We're going to get into stats and evidence right now of what's taking place in the psychology of our mind and how detrimental it's been to our human existence in just a short 11 years. You see, what happens is when you get on your phone and you are looking for value on your phone and you're searching for it in your likes and hearts and comments and whatever way that you find value in the wrong habits on this thing, what's happening is that you get addicted to it. When you start getting good feedback or you start getting good value with air quotes, you start getting dopamine that goes into your body, and it tells you that you are enjoying this. The same things that take place in the drug users, same things that take place in people that win lotteries or anybody that is gambling. It's the same thing. It's the adrenaline rush. It's the dopamine. It's the thing that makes you addicted to wanting to get more and more of it. The problem is, and it's absolutely a problem, it's a byproduct, is that it leads to a cycle that is so detrimental to the human psyche that we couldn't possibly have been built to handle those types of things in the current model that we're undering, when we're still going into it blindly with blind ignorance to what this thing is actually doing to us. I'm hoping that this episode and other things like this bring a sense of awareness to one another, that we need to wake up a little bit. And I'm not talking about throwing these things away and not using them. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about being aware of what's taking place. And just because your phone's probing you doesn't mean that you have to answer. It doesn't mean that you have to dive into these unhealthy habits. And some of the unhealthy habits, and those will be a byproduct, and we'll get into that, take place. But before we get into byproducts, I want to talk to you about stats and evidence, because I think they're crucial. Something that is happening, and if you don't believe me, according to the CDC, I know it's the CDC. I don't know if we trust them anymore or not. I sure do. U.S. hospitals admissions, they did a test, okay? They've taken all the data from the last 11 years, and they've compared that to times before it. And the test for this one is U.S. hospitals admissions for non-fatal self-harm, okay? So what I'm about to read you is the results from the U.S. hospitals admissions for non-fatal self-harm since 2009. In girls that are 15 to 19, it's up 62% compared to the previous decade. 62% in ages 15 to 19 of hospital admissions for non-fatal self-harm, cutting, that type of self-harm to the body and to the mind. For preteens, ages 10 to 14, our precious third graders, fourth graders, fifth graders, sixth graders, it's up 189%. In 11 years, it's up almost 4 times as much. That's on non-fatal self-harms. According to CDC, the amount of suicide rates since 2009 compared to the decade prior. In girls 15 to 19, it's up 70%. That's real trauma, ladies and gentlemen, that's taking place. Real trauma. And there's a lot of variables that take place in the suicides. Not all of it is on social media and cell phones. But the direct correlation from the time that these things were brought into our lives to where we are now plays a massive, massive role. One that I cannot turn a blind eye to, that you can't. You shouldn't be able to. That same data in preteens, again, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th graders, ages 10 to 14, you're looking at 151% increase. It's unfathomable, ladies and gentlemen. Our kids already grow up too fast as they are. I see it every day inside the school world. We do our very, very best to separate the older kids from the younger kids. But at a school where I teach at, it's almost impossible because it's so small that the influence is going to happen. And you see it. And these cell phones play such a part. And the reason I read you the girls' rates is because they are much, much higher than that of the boys. And that's simple. There is an unfair standard of beauty, of perfection that is placed on females in this society. Again, another study, that's a podcast show for another day altogether, about the unreal expectations of a female today. And it's been that way for a long time, don't get me wrong, but now you've put it into this hyperdrive where you've given cell phones to preteens and you're asking them, they have now the ability to get on Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook. And what do you think they're doing? You've got preteen boys learning their bodies for the first time, finding out that they can find pornography at the press of a button. And if we don't monitor these things, what's taking place? You have real pressures being put on females at 10, 11, 12 years of age to deliver. And again, I know I'm speaking in extreme circumstances, but I don't know if I am. I really don't know if I am. Again, I'm a simpleton and I apologize for that, but I'm taking what I know and I'm trying to be better. And I'm saying to you, because of the unfair expectations that are being placed on females, and you match that with the amount of poor parenting that's taken place in today's society, you're going to have these unfortunate side effects. Suicide rates in non-fatal self-harm continue to crawl up, 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 up. And it ain't even crawling at this point, guys. It is sprinting. And it's only getting worse. The number of mental issues, mental anxieties, mental disorders, you've got depression, ultimate depression, chronic depression of I'm not worth anything. I have no value. I'm alone. It's all of it because they're constantly seeking validation through these phones. And it's not just teenagers, ladies and gentlemen. It's adults. It's adults. I bet if you reflect, you can look and think back on a couple shameful things that maybe you've done on social media. Maybe a person you reached out to or a DM that you slid into, you might have said something inappropriate or you wish you would never see the light of day. There's probably a lot more of you out there. There's a lot more of us out there than there are not. Let's just put it that way. And that's because we give in. Our human weakness wins more than times than it doesn't. And we give in to these things. Another statistic, MIT talks about how they did a survey, a test, and the results they found is that fake news on Twitter spreads 6 times faster than that of true news. Fake news on Twitter spreads 6 times faster than that of real news. Is anybody shocked by that? Again, I don't think I said anything groundbreaking here. The issue is that there's not enough self-awareness to look at yourself and say, what is it that I'm sharing? What exactly is the existential threat here? And the answer is, it is a huge existential threat because you are contributing to the worst versions of yourself and the worst versions of society. But because it's such an astronomical approach in view of way to, fix this, I'll just give in. I'll just give in to the human weakness and I won't do better. So fake news, it's a huge thing that's taking place today. We are literally in the age of disinformation. We are in the age, and I said this on my last show, where we are actively rejecting data. We are living, and guys, I talk about this all the time. And it's something that I've mentioned to you more than once, but I want you guys, if you can, there's a book out there right here. It's called Mindset by Carol S. Dweck, PhD. Okay, in here is where I talked about it all the time. You've got the survival state of mind, the emotional state of mind, and the executive state of mind. Do you understand now what I'm talking about? I am in the pursuit of the executive state of mind. That is where I take information, I respond to information, and I quit responding emotionally to what I'm being told is truth. I'm no longer looking at my emotions that are being triggered as truth. I'm going beyond that. I am doing my homework. I understand that takes time. And as somebody with no children, I understand how easy that is to do that. However, what I'm saying to you is if you don't have the time, don't actively participate. Don't spread something based on how it emoted you, on how it triggered you emotionally. Because I'm telling you, that's when we become sheep. It's a problem. It is absolutely a problem. It's a problem, and it's one of those things that it's more than just a problem. And I want to explain to you, I want to go another step forward. Okay, so there is this company called AdFonts Media, and what they do is they're a third-party company when it comes to information. They look at every media conglomerate that exists, okay, whether it be a social media platform, whether it be a major network, you know, it could be ABC News, or it could be cable networks such as CNN, Fox, MSNBC. And what they do is they take all the information that comes in and they try to put together a media bias chart every year. And they want to give to people the most credible information websites that they can find and let people do with it what they want. And there's a lot of things that take place on this chart. So number one, at the top of this chart, sitting right in the smack dab center of everything, not on the left, not on the right, not slightly skewed one way or the other. Right smack dab in the middle, as of 2018, the AP, Associated Press, is considered to be, even by those Republicans and even by Democrats, considered to be the most credible, fair, unbiased website that exists for you to get your news from. The Associated Press. Shortly after that, you've got Reuters, Bloomberg, C-SPAN, NPR, which slides a little left, but not enough on the scale to make a difference. Everything I'm telling you is on every news network that I'm telling you right now is inside this rectangle box that they call the most fair, credible news that you're going to get. The New Yorker, Times, Forbes, Fortune, Market Watch. That skews a little bit right, but it's still within that rectangle. It's still enough that you're going to get a more unbiased information than you would not. Then you have CNN, which is slightly left-leaning, but has lost the credibility war. Then there's Fox News. Everybody talks about this all the time, but like Fox News, I mean, they're fair and balanced. That's what everybody, or that's their motto. Fox News is twice as much on the right side that CNN is on the left side, and they are considered extreme, unfair interpretations of the news. Now, I might have just lost anybody that is looking for affirmation. Again, I am somebody trying to pursue the executive mindset. And what I might have just said might have just made somebody uncomfortable, because what it does is it means that you have to take a real look at yourself and say, is the place I'm going to get my information from, is that the best place for me to receive information? Because right now they're telling you that Associated Press is the best place to go. Now, if I'm somebody that's watching, cable news network, Fox News, as far as for ratings, you can't touch them. 4 times more people watching Fox News than CNN and NBC together. They kill it. The question is, are people watching Fox News for affirmation or for information? Are people watching CNN for affirmation or for information? These are important, because if AP is the place that they're telling you for the 3rd year in a row is the most consistent, most unbiased, most fair place that you can go, why are we not demanding that? Why are we not demanding? Why is that not the highest rated place to get your news? It should be. Absolutely should be. But it's because we need to reflect and then do the next thing that's taken a beating since 2009, and that's critically think. I'm not sitting here on my soapbox, guys, telling you that I'm better than anybody, because I'm not. I'm telling you that this book, not just this book, it's just anybody's approach that way. It's anybody that is hungry for knowledge. See, the most important thing you can do when you don't know something, when somebody asks you a question, my students do this all the time. When they ask me a question, the honest answer I can give them if I don't know something is I don't know, but I'll find out. That's the difference. Not to sit there and babble through something and pretend like I know it. I've done that. I used to be there. I'm no longer there. I can no longer subscribe to that way of thinking. I can no longer blindly follow one team over the other when it comes to the political spectrum and when it comes to information. So MIT says that Twitter spreads fake news 6 times more likely than it does true. And that's because what happens is we become emotionally triggered. We take that and we share it to the next person and we use it as truth. That means we no longer are accepting truth. No longer accepting truth. This documentary, The Social Dilemma, talks about whether or not Russia hacked into Facebook and interfered into the election. Mark Zuckerberg is asked directly that in 2018 if he was willing to admit that. And here's what we know. We know what we know now is what we knew then. Facebook has an algorithm that says if somebody has watched or liked a conspiracy theory video, they are more likely going to be fed conspiracy theory videos, and they're going to find 100 people that look like them, and they're going to create communities. These are all things that your tool, that your artificial intelligence is creating for you. Russia found ways to influence. They didn't hack. They played by the rules. They found ways to use the algorithms to influence people. Now, here's the great truth on both sides of things. Did Russia interfere with the election? It's not a yes/no answer, but they did try to have an impact on the election by playing by the rules of social media today. That is absolutely fact. But here's another undeniable fact. You have absolutely no idea if it tipped the scale one way or the other in the election because Russia doesn't get to vote. Hillary Clinton, Democrats, could have lost straight up. Could have lost straight up. And that's the truth. That's something that 4 years ago I couldn't accept. That didn't sit well with me. But it's the truth. And we can't reject truth. Another thing that Mark Zuckerberg in 2004 never meant to take place that exists. In 2004, Mark Zuckerberg made Facebook to impress a girl. In today's political climate, Facebook is weaponized against its people as propaganda. So in Social Dilemma, again, the documentary, they give an example of the country of Myanmar. The only version of the internet that citizens of Myanmar know is what they get from Facebook. So what happens is in that country, you go and you buy a cell phone. The people at the cell phone will set you up with Facebook. That's the only thing. They'll set it up for you. And right there, it takes you to the propaganda that is being driven by the government because they control everything. And one thing that took place is over time was this complete assault on Muslims that took place from Myanmar, that so much so that 700,000 Muslims had to escape because they were being, just like that happened in the Holocaust with the Jews, the people were being propagandized to hate their own civilians, their own peers. Sound familiar? We are at a place now where you hear civil war, civil war, civil war. No. Be better. Be better. Use words that matter. We have to. Democrats start talking about, they say, defund the police. Well, that's okay. Anybody that wants safety in their life doesn't want police not around. What's happening is then you hear the comment, well, I don't mean defund. We mean actually, transfer the funds differently. Then don't market it as defund. Republicans, if you are a part of the George Floyd team where you thought it was absolutely atrocious the way he died, then come out and say that outward or out loud. Promote that before you promote Blue Lives Matter. Because when you stay silent on the George Floyd issue, and then 2 weeks go by, and now you're outwardly protecting the Blue Lives Matter, that's where people have their disconnect. That's where people have an issue. It feels, whether it's true or not, that's how the approach is. That's how it feels. Where was your engagement to say what happened to George Floyd was wrong on social media? Why were you only motivated to do the one side of things. So again, there's wrong on both sides. And what's incredible, and I did this on my first episode, and I still believe it to be true, is that when we sit down together in a room, we find out that we have more in common than we have in different. And it's important, ladies and gentlemen. We're so much closer on these ideologies than people think, and we spend so much time being emotionally triggered to spend that time on the 1%, 2%, 10% that separates us. Let's talk about byproducts. The byproduct of cell phones and social media today, especially on the young ones, right? Especially not just on the young ones. Let's just talk about who we are. If you are a divorced parent and you're in your middle age, you're probably looking at life right now as like, what the hell do I do? If it's brand new, you're probably thinking, woohoo. But once you kind of settle in and those walls start talking to you later at night, you go into your worst habits. Not all. But data will say that we spend more time trying to find our value, trying to find our next lover, trying to find whatever in these phones, and therefore we don't approach each other anymore. We are so afraid to approach each other. Lack of self-value. It's scary. It's absolutely scary. Because here's what's taking place. Since we are the product, it's the gradual, slight, imperceptible change in our own behavior and perception that is the product. It's scary. I try to tell my students, I teach a leadership class, I try to tell them that A, we're in this together. B, if you're feeling a certain way, reach out. What you cannot do, if you were just, let me give you a practical application, an example of what I'm talking about. Here's the first time in your life where you broke up with a significant other and now you're on your Facebook. The first time that you allowed yourself the time to go and look up your ex's Facebook page to see if they're dating anybody else. The first time you gave yourself that approval, that's the first time that you actually created this unhealthy pattern, because then you said it was okay for me to go down these types of social constructs, go down these types of social rabbit holes where I have then fed myself the worst thing that I possibly could. And then I've said it's okay because once you've done it once, you'll do it 1,000 times. And then once you've done it in that example, you'll do other examples. And then you get to a point where you don't even recognize or have boundaries put up. There's no more integrity. It's all out the window. And I know this because I've been there. I've been there. I don't know about you guys, but I've absolutely been there. And it's scary. It's absolutely scary. You have to find ways to be aware. And that brings me to, how do we fix this? If you're going to create and talk about a problem, you better have a solution. And I got to be honest with you. I'm a simpleton, like I said. I don't know if I do know how to fix this. But what one person, Tristan Harris from that documentary, he is now the co-founder of Humane Nonprofit Foundation, where he is working on ethical artificial intelligence design. And he is in front of Congress talking about how it is the responsibility of these social media platforms to help fix the human weaknesses and overcome those artificial intelligent algorithms, and have the algorithms start working for us for the best parts of humanity and not the worst parts of humanity. There's just a lot to get into there, but basically better AI that works for us. I'm going to argue one thing, and I'm going to say this, that instead of saying this out loud, where we say this all the time, oh yeah, media, they don't care. They're trying to paint a picture. Well, since you've said that, go one step further. Find out what the truth is. Quit sharing 6 times faster than true news. Find out what the truth is. Truth exists. We need it. Take self-ownership. Have self-awareness so that you can enjoy the utopia part of the cell phones and not the dystopian part, because that is the magic of that drug that is the cell phone and social media, is that there is simultaneously a utopia and a dystopia taking place at the same time. You might be getting a car or an Uber that takes you from one place to the other by pressing a button, and they're there in 30 seconds. But while you're in the car, you're looking up your ex-girlfriend's Facebook page and you're wondering why you ever broke up with her in the first place. And that is when we lead down these paths that just make us so insecure and highlight our vulnerabilities. Last thing I want to say is this, and then I'll let you go. My big hopeful finish is this. Now that you're aware, human empathy is huge. Real connection is hard, but just be brave for 2 seconds. And you never know if you just walk up to somebody and say, "Hi, how are you?" It might just change your life. It's changed mine. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you for being a part of the show. I absolutely appreciate anybody that took place and sat through this babble. I am working on it. Next week, like I said, we'll have Nicholas Horton, MMA fighter. He just signed with XFC. We'll have him on the show. We'll be talking about Acosta and Adesanya that just took place over the weekend, his training regimen. He is a 2-title belt holder right now, so he's going to be a fantastic and fascinating story to listen to. As always, Robert Gifford here talking to you guys. Subscribe, hit like, comment, whatever you got to do. Practice healthy habits. We'll see you on down the road. Peace.